It is a very big pleasure to come back and see the alumni of Beis Yaakov. And I was thinking to myself that the last time that I gave a shiur like this, it was about a little less than a year ago at the end of the summer. It was all about how to get yourself prepared and ready for Shidduchim, for marriage. And there was one young lady that was sitting at the table who was taking very copious notes the entire time, just as she did when she was my Talmid in Beis Yaakov. And she must have done a very good job during that shiur, because Hadassah Weinstock became Hadassah Horowitz, my daughter-in-law. So in Mirz Hashem, Be'ez Hashem, we hope that the shiur should do well for all of you. And Be'ez Hashem, next year we shouldn't have to give such a class. You'll all be with your husbands in Lakewood, in Eretz Yisrael, wherever you're going to be, building your real Bayis Neman B'Yisrael. We're supposed to speak about what it means to get ready for marriage. And it's also hashkacha that we're holding Erev Shabbos, and Shabbos itself is Erev Shivasa B'Tammuz, which means that we're holding almost by the 3 weeks. So I'd like to try to find the connection between the 3 weeks and the readying of oneself for a marriage, for building their own house. And I think that there is something that is very powerful, and Mirz Hashem will be able to understand the words properly. The destruction of the Beis HaMikdash was called Chorban Habayis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroyed his house. It wasn't that the Romans came and destroyed the house. It wasn't that the Greeks came along. It wasn't that the Babylonians came along. The Ribono Shel Olam destroyed his house. But not because he wanted to. He destroyed the house because Klal Yisrael destroyed the house. We had a Beis HaMikdash, we were in Yerushalayim, Yar HaKodesh, Kohanim were doing their avodah. You can bring korbanos every single day. Klal Yisrael gathered together, the Shlosheh Regalim. Who could imagine what it looked like? Chazal tell us that if you were ever weak in your emunah, all you needed to do was walk into the Beis HaMikdash. You would see the Hiskalus HaShechina, the revelation of the Shechina in front of your eyes, and you'd walk out of there infused with a belief in the Ribono Shel Olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the bayis, He gave us the Beis HaMikdash for our benefit. But if you want the house to last, you want the house to be miskayim, to endure, so then you have to take care of it in the right way. Just like if you have a nice, beautiful house like this, you have to get yourself a very nice cleaning lady who doesn't get caught by ice in the streets of Los Angeles. And she comes, I would imagine, here at least 3 or 4 times a week, correct? If not more. And she makes sure that the floors are clean and the pictures are dusted and every single one of these beads on the lamp over here is cleaned. She makes sure the laundry is all done and the table is set, getting ready for Shabbos Kodesh, so on and so forth. Because when you have a bayis, when you have a house, especially one that has intrinsic value to it, you have to make sure that you're taking care of it in the right way. The Nefesh HaChaim tells us that by the time that Titus came along to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, you should know that the Beis HaMikdash was already destroyed. Why? Because Klal Yisrael did not maintain the house. They did not appreciate and value the Kedusha that was there. They did not give respect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and His mitzvahs and His Torah and the Karbanos and the Kohanim and the Leviim. And says the Ribono Shel Olam, if you don't appreciate the bayis, the house that I built for you, so then the house is going to disappear. I can't have it here anymore. And therefore comes along a Titus, comes along a Nebuchadnezzar, comes along all of our enemies. They destroy the house, but says the Nefesh HaChaim, they destroyed what was already destroyed with their own hands. You want to know what is a Segulah to get married? I assume anybody that came to this class on a Thursday night, last minute, 7 o'clock in the afternoon, when there's a vort tonight, I'm not going to keep you too long, I know, Baruch Hashem, Mazel Tov soon by all of you. So it must mean you want to get married. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want to know? When your mother gets the call of the right one, what does he want to know? He wants to know that the bayis, the house that you're going to build, together with your husband, Be'ez Hashem, is going to be a bayis ne'eman b'Yisrael that is going to endure. Not that you're going to do the laundry, and not that you're going to mop the floors, and not that you're going to clean the dishes. You have to leave something for your husbands to do. He wants to know, is the radiance of Shalom Bayis, the way that a Yiddish house is supposed to look, is that what he's able to entrust you with when he watches you and your chassan stand under the chuppah and commit yourselves to each other for the rest of your lives? Everybody's house is like a miniature Beis HaMikdash. Everybody's house has an ability to bring the Shekhinah down. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to make sure that you are someone that he trusts is going to follow through with that mission. What destroyed the Beis HaMikdash? The first one we know, Gimel, Averos, the 3 cardinal sins, Gilarayah, Shvichas Damim, and Avodah Zarah. Doesn't get worse than that. But the second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of Sinas Chinam. Senseless hatred, hating another person for no reason. And that, the Gemara tells us, it must be that it's worse than Shvichas Damim, Gilarayas, and Avodah Zarah. Because the first Beis HaMikdash was rebuilt. The second one, 2,000 years later, is still lying in ruins. That means on the 3 cardinal sins, it's easy to do tshuva, so to speak, to the extent that 70 years later Hashem says, let's rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. But that one sin of Sinas Chinam, where Klal Yisrael did not like each other and treat each other in the right way, that, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I have not forgiven you yet because I don't see that you got over it. And I can't rebuild the house. And therefore, I'm a homeless God in this world. I have no place to go. I have no Beis HaMikdash to hang my hat in. I can't enjoy the Klal Yisrael by the Shlosheh Regalim. I can't smell the reach nichayach of one single korban. All because you destroyed the house and you didn't rebuild the house yet. Which means that Sinas Chinam, whatever exactly that means, must be so bad that it destroys and it doesn't build. The way that we're masakin, that we fix up the loss of the Beis HaMikdash, is by counterbalancing the Sinas Chinam, that hatred that there is in the world. The way that we fix the hate, the sin that was done, is that we have to go to the other degree, the other extreme, and that is, we call it Avas Chinam, where you love another Jew, but you have to know what it means to love another Jew. And I think that when we understand this, we'll see what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from all of you in your own house. And he wants to know, is this the way you're going to treat your husbands? Years ago, we were zeicher to have Rav Dovid come and speak in our shul. He's one of the big mechanchim in the world today. And he told over the following story. He has a friend. This story goes back already 15, 16 years ago. He had a friend who was living in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, I imagine. And his wife, unfortunately, began getting a bit senile. And she was a relatively young woman, but as a result of her senility, she began to say very unruly things to her husband. She would criticize him, she would yell at him, she would put him down, very often in public, and all of the time in front of the children. And this man was getting so upset. First of all, he got married to a woman that was healthy, and now she gets sick. You can't plan for those things. But her sickness was that she was shaming and embarrassing him all of the time. And he was getting very disturbed. And it was really, really hard to deal with it. They go to a chasana. She comes from the other side of the mechitza, and she starts berating him in front of all of his friends. They're sitting at the Shabbos table. They have a few guests at the table. She starts making fun of his divrei Torah. They go to Tiyul with the family, and he's very excited. All the kids are there, and the wife begins screaming and yelling at her husband and shames him in front of his own children. And he says to Rabbi Brizak, he says, I cannot handle this anymore. I don't know what to do. If I sit quietly, so she just keeps walking all over me. If I say something, so then it turns into a bigger fight. I don't know how much longer I can handle this. What should I do? What should I do? So Rabbi Brizak says to the man, listen, I can't imagine the nisayon that you are going through. But one thing I know, you never lose out for being mevater and for not responding and overlooking the injustice that is done to you. You'll never lose out. I can't tell you what to do because I can't imagine how difficult it is, but I can tell you one thing, you'll never ever lose out. So the man leaves and he thinks about it. And he decides, you know what, I'll try what Rabbi Brizak said. And sure enough, his wife's lacing into him. He doesn't say a word. She embarrasses him by the next simcha they go to. Doesn't say a word. So on and so forth. It's going on like this. About a month later, he calls and he says, Rabbi Brizak, I have to tell you something amazing. He said, you know what you told me? Yes, I did it. I want you to know, I did it. I didn't answer back. I didn't say a word. I was mevater on every single time. My poor wife, Nebuch, she's sick already at such a young age. I didn't say a word. He said, last night, my kids were in the other room. And they were talking amongst themselves. They didn't know that I was listening. And they said to each other, when you grow up, who do you want to be like? You know how kids are. Oh, it's not who you want to be like. So this one said like this. And then my son said, when I grow up, I want to be just like Tati. And then he said, do you see how mommy talks to Tati? And do you see how Tati doesn't do anything? Do you see? This is a good guitar over there. Good thing it's after 3 weeks yet. Okay. He said, do you see how Tati doesn't say a word? When I grew up, I want to be just like Tati. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching all of Klal Yisrael during these 3 weeks of our life. And He wants to know, what kind of a person are we? Are we a person that is holding grudges and answering back and showing our sinas chinam to another person that bothers us? Or are we able to overlook, not see, try to see the best that is in that person, forgive and forget? You know, there's a famous ma'aser with Rav Shach. It's similar to one that is said over with Rav Aryeh Levine, but Rav Shach is a little bit different. Rav Shach, there was a shemua, there was like a rumor that when Rav Shach got married, he and his wife decided that they would end up being mevater between each other on everything. And somebody heard that it's been like that since they got married. Remember, Rav Shach lived about 112 years old, according to some opinions. So for like 80 years, the husband and wife, they were mevater between each other. And somebody came to the Rebbe and said, is that true? From the beginning until now, you're mevater? He said, listen, I'll tell you what happened. We got married. And Rav Shach told me, he said, I don't have much money. I can't offer you jewels. I can't offer you diamonds. I can't give you a fancy apartment. I can't give you anything. One thing I promise you, I can be mevater. I can overlook anything that happens. You want to do this, I want something else, I'll go with you. I get upset, I'll overlook it. So, I have an idea. It's probably going to be very hard to do it every single day. So why don't we do like this? Sundays, I'm mevater. Mondays, you're mevater. Tuesdays, I'm mevater. Wednesdays, you are. Thursday, Friday, until we get to Shabbos, we'll keep switching off. Every day, one of us will be mevater. And that way it'll be easier for us to do. So the Rebbe looks at this person who's asking about the story, and she says, but you have to understand your Rosh Hashiva. On the first day that we got married, he was mevater. And the next day he turns to me and he says, it's so geschmack to be mevater. He says, can you do me a favor? Could you let me be the mevater every day of the week? And Rav Shach has been a mevater every single day of his life. Marriage in the storybooks is amazing. When you go to a chassid and you see the chassid and kala standing under the chuppah that costs like $50,000 for those flowers, or in Lakewood $50. It doesn't matter, the same chuppah, the same brachas, the same Rosh Hashiva, doesn't matter the price of the flowers. And you see them, and they're surrounded by family and friends, and then there's the dancing, and your friend, she looks so amazing in her kala gown. It was from the gemach, it's not from the gemach, you can't tell, you're not sure. She had it made, it doesn't matter. Chassan is from 6 o'clock in the evening till 12 o'clock in the morning, over, and that's the last time she ever wears the chasana gown. But it looks amazing. The chasana, the sheva brachas, everything looks amazing. How they doing? They got their apartment, they're in Lakewood, they're in Eretz Yisrael. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. What your friends never tell you is that as amazing as marriage is, and it is amazing, and in Mitzvah Hashem, you're all going to get there soon, is that it's hard work. It's two people from two different worlds, two different families, two different emotionally, biologically, physiologically, spiritually, two different people altogether. Your minds work different, your emotions work different, your brain, everything is different. Your life experience is different, even though you both grew up in LA and you walk down the street and okay, it's different. And then suddenly you're in your house, under one roof. Like when you're in seminary and you had that one roommate that you couldn't stand. And with the other girls in the seminary, like, if you didn't like them, so at least, Baruch Hashem, at the end of the night, you said goodnight and you went to your room. But what if one of those girls is your roommate? At the end of the night, you close the door. Oh, she's there. You cannot escape. Guess what? When you get married, you have a new roommate for the rest of your life. And you can never escape. And when you get into a situation where your world is colliding with his world, and his expectations are colliding with your expectations, and your emotions are colliding with his emotions, and now you're in the midst of a moment of tensity, of tension, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to know, what are you going to do at that moment? What are you going to do? Are you going to be the dear wife who begins to scream and yell at her husband and give him a piece of her mind, like so many wonderful women in Klal Yisrael love to do? Or are you going to be a mevater and not engage in the argument, in the tension, in the emotions, in the fight? What kind of a wife are you going to be? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to give you a house. I want to bring you to your chassan. Everyone even has a chassan waiting. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Arboyim Yoyim Kaidim Yitziras Havlad, 40 days before even inception. HaKadosh Baruch Hu already announced, Ploini Labas Ploini. Your chassan to you, it's already announced. Min HaShamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows who it's going to be. He's ready to bring it. One thing he wants to know, when I bring you together, is that bayis going to be a bayis ne'eman where you are faithful to being people that are true balei midas, with the most refined of character, where there is no sinas chinam between a husband and a wife, and all that there is ava, is the love between the two of you. There's a ma'aseh I saw many, many years ago about a gvir, a wealthy man who unfortunately ended up losing all of his money. And times were very difficult for him. And he was no longer, he had to get rid of his fancy car, they had to move out of their fancy house. No longer was he able to write big checks for tzedakah, barely anything for tzedakah. And he himself turned from the gvir that was giving to the ani that was asking and receiving. And it was very, very painful for this man. For him, for his wife, for his children. And everybody in town knew what happened. Everybody. And his wife was very strange. Because even though that the family were living in poverty, and they were living in a small apartment, and they were driving a very simple automobile compared to what they used to drive, and the food was Tomchei Shabbos, and it was tzedakah, and whatever they needed to get through the week, his wife continued to walk around in her most beautiful clothing and her expensive jewelry. And all the women in the neighborhood thought, this is very strange. Everybody knows they're poor. She could take that diamond necklace and those pearl earrings and that gold paperclip bracelet that she's wearing, and she could go to the pawn shop and she could sell it for thousands and thousands of dollars, and the family would have money. Why is she walking around like she was when she was the gvirish lady of the town? What is she doing? And so the women were speaking very not nice about her. And one day this lady's walking down the street wearing beautiful clothes, wearing her fanciest jewelry. Her sheitel, it's before they had the thing going down the middle over there, but it was still a nice sheitel. And makeup done, she looked like, at a chasana. And one of the other ladies in the community, they could not take it anymore. They walked over and they said, please, what are you doing? Everybody knows that your husband is poor. Everybody knows you lost all your money, and everybody knows if you would sell your jewelry, your family would have more money. Why do you keep walking around with all of this? And the woman said to her the following: you can't imagine how much pain my husband is in as a result of losing all of his money. You can't imagine how much it upsets my husband every single night when he walks into our small, tiny apartment and he thinks about the house that we used to have. You don't know what it's like when he drives down the street in his simple automobile and one of those big cars that he used to have comes rooming by him and blows him away to the side, and he remembers what he used to drive. And you don't know what it's like for my husband to have to go to every single school of our children right now and say, we have no money for tuition. Please, could you give us a full scholarship? You don't know the shame and embarrassment that he's going through. But there's one thing that my husband still looks at and still has simcha from and nachas from, and still reminds him that times are not as bad as it looks. And that's when he sees me, dressed in my nice clothing, with my fancy necklace and my bracelet and my earrings, and my sheitel done the way that he used to like it, and my makeup exactly so. Because when my husband sees me, he knows that life is not so bad. You think I'm doing this for myself? I'm doing all of this for him, so that he should have a little bit of menuchas hanefesh in his life. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're going to get into things in your marriage nobody can foresee. I wish you only everything should be peaceful, and everything should always go great, and there should never be any hiccups, and no hurdles, and no nothing. I remember once, my wife and I were in, not just Shana Rishona, we were like in Chodesh Rishona. And we went to be by one of my Rebbeim for Shabbos in Lakewood. And it was like, I don't know, 1 or 2 months after we got married. And we're sitting at the Shabbos table, and we keep looking at each other, and we're going to keep giggling. Nice chassan and kala, googly eyes going like this. And we keep laughing with each other. We're not even paying attention to anything that's going on at that Shabbos table. And my rabbi looks at me and he says, "Oh, it's so cute, isn't it? You really love each other, don't you?" And we started giggling even more. And we said, "Yes, it's so cute. We love each other so much." And then he looked at us. He and himself had been married for already probably 25, 30 years at the time. And he said, "Until you experience life together, until you experience the challenges and the ups and the downs and the successes and the failures of life together, you don't even know what love is all about." So you're going to get into your beautiful Bayis Ne'eman B'Yisrael, and it's going to be mamish amazing. Beautiful apartment, if you could find one in Lakewood these days, somewhere in Ramat Eshkol, or if you're more yeshivish, you'll be in Sorotskin, wherever you're going to end up. And one day, your husband's going to come home, and he was expecting dinner to be made already, and he is what they call in the world today, hangry. You know what hangry are? You all know what hangry. I just learned this word yesterday. I just found out that some of my kids are hangry kids. I said, "What's the matter? They come back from camp. What's this?" "They're hangry," my wife tells me. "What does that mean?" "Hungry, angry." "Okay, hangry." And your husband had a long day, and by the time he got to the dining hall in the mirror, for some reason, there was no food left. And he tried to go to one of the stores over there in Beis Yisrael, for whatever reason it was, credit card not working. And he goes to the second Seder, and he learned, and he gets on the tender, now it takes him home, travels an hour, he gets home 7:30 p.m. at night. He is exhausted, and he is hangry. And he can't wait to come in and just see the table set, smell your gourmet meals, because every kala tries so hard every night to make a gourmet meal for her husband. And he's looking forward the whole day. And he walks in, he didn't know that you had a sheitel appointment that day that took 4 hours longer than you thought that it would, because you and the sheitel macher schmoozed for like 3 hours. He didn't know. And he didn't know that when he walks in the house, guess what? There's no dinner. He didn't know. And now he looks at you, and you look at him, and you know what the hangry looks like, and now you're just waiting for the worst. But I'm assuming all of you are going to marry Balei Midas who know how to control their hangry moods. And you yourself, who are Balei Midas, and are going to know how to smile and get food ready immediately for him, You're going to make sure that everything in the house is peaceful. There was a Rav in Eretz Yisrael. He was a very big expert in Shalom Bayis. And he would go around giving shiurim in Shalom Bayis. He would counsel people in Shalom Bayis. And he found that every time he was coming back from his long day in Kollel, he and his wife, they would like get in an argument every single day. And he's like, this is so strange. I'm like the master of Shalom Bayis. I give the classes, I counsel the couples, I give chizuk to the young married men, how they're going to be a better husband. And I'm coming home like every single day, and my wife and I getting in a fight. How does that work? And then he realized that from the time of lunch until he got home was something like 5 or 6 hours. And he was, before they knew that there was something called hangry, he was hangry. So he decided he's going to start bringing an extra apple with him. And on the bus ride from Kollel to his house, he's going to eat an apple. And then when he came home, he was so relaxed and calm. He was no longer hungry or angry. He was able to have Shalom Bayis once again. I'm sure that you're not going to get in a fight with your husbands over food. I'm sure about that. But there will be other situations more intense than that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to know. How are your midos? How do you look at your husband? How do you talk to him? How do you make him feel? What was the godless, the greatness of Aisha's Rebbe Akiva? What was her greatness? Her greatness is that she saw a man that is a shepherd tending to the flocks of her father, who knew not a word of Torah, not an aleph from a beis, nothing. But she saw all the potential that was inside of him. And she believed so strongly in Rabbi Akiva, she said, I'm the richest lady in the world, I'd give it all up just to marry you. And she gave up everything, money, fame, fortune, top guy in Brisk. She gave it all up. Because she saw the greatness in her husband. And she encouraged him. And he said, no, I'm enough. No, you're not enough, you're something. You could, you will, you'll accomplish, you'll make it, you'll achieve. And she ends up with Rabbi Akiva. When you get married, do you think your husbands are polished? You have fathers that are Talmid Chachamim. You have Rebbeim that made impressions on you. You went to seminary, you went to people's homes. You saw the beauty and the radiance of Torah. Your husband is a 22, 23-year-old selfish brat that has been living in dormitories for the last 10 years of his life. He doesn't even know how to pick his socks up off the floor. You'll find out about that. He doesn't know what's an appropriate joke and an inappropriate joke. I remember my wife and I were engaged, and we're driving down the street, and I still, the image is very vivid in my mind. I know exactly where we were. And I'm driving, and I made a very sarcastic joke. Because that's what Bachrim do. They make sarcastic jokes. That's how they talk to each other. And I start laughing my head off. And I'm waiting for my Kala to start laughing as well. And there's no noise coming out of her. I was like, wow, she has such a bad sense of humor. And then I turn and I look. I say, what? It's funny. And she turns her face to me, and there's a tear that's coming down her cheek. And she said, I don't like sarcastic jokes. I don't think that they're funny. I said, okay. And you could ask my wife. It might be that it was the last sarcastic joke I ever made to my wife. Maybe on one hand you could still tell. Because when you get into marriage, the way that it works is, I'm here for them, not that they're here for me. What's going to make them happy? What's going to make them comfortable? What's going to help them succeed? What's going to help them realize the godless, the greatness that is inside of them? What is going to allow them to steig and to grow? What's going to make my house comfortable so that when they walk into the home at the end of a long day, I feel so good over here. A young chassan called me not long ago. He's married for a few months. And he said, Rabbi, I'm a little embarrassed. I said, what's the matter? He said, I love my wife and my house so much. At 6 o'clock every night, we finish Seder, we finish learning at 6:30. 6 o'clock every night, I already start getting excited to go home because I just love coming home. I said, halavai, that you'll feel like that for the rest of your life. And halavai, every man and woman, every husband and wife, they would feel like that for the rest of their lives. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming, and he's examining. And he's looking at one thing. How are the midos of you? You want to ready yourself for marriage? He wants to know, how much do you think about yourself? And how much do you think about somebody else? How much are you willing to give up the things that you want so that somebody else could be happy and have what they want and what they need? The Chazon Ish has a sefer called Emunah U'Bitachon. And even though that the title is Emunah and Bitachon, a lot of the sefer, at least in the beginning anyway, is all about understanding the complexities of a human being. And the Chazon Ish goes through a discussion about what it means to really be a mensch here in this world. And he says an amazing idea in the world of Avas Yisrael. He says, do you know what real Ava is? Real Ava is when I don't think about myself at all, and I look and I think about the other person that is standing there, and I try to figure out everything that I could possibly do to enhance that person's life. Whether it is a smile, whether it is a ride, whether it is a shoulder to cry on, whether it is a kind word, whatever that person needs for their happiness, I am going to try to do because I love them so much. I want them to have the best in life. Says the Chazon Ish, it's so far-reaching that even if this person will wrong you and disappoint you and upset you and frustrate you, you're so focused in on how much you love that person and appreciate that person and are seeing only the good in that person, while they're hurting you, you're trying to figure out ways how I can make their life better. That's real Avas Yisrael. It's not about me. It's all about my fellow Jew. When you get married, in Mi'etz Hashem, which should be very soon, it's not about you. It's about your husband. It's about you seeing and appreciating and understanding all of the greatness, all of the potential, all of his emotional world and makeup, everything about him, so that you could be the best wife in the entire world. A wife who is constantly thinking about her husband. You go to the store, you're buying food for dinner, you're thinking about your husband, what would he like to eat? No, you're in the mood for whatever you're in the mood for, but you know he doesn't really like that so much. So you make something for him. It's coming time, bein zmanim, and you can't wait to run home to mommy. And mommy's going to take good care of you. And you're going to come back to your home. Wonderful. But your husband lives in a different state. He also wants to see his mommy. So what's the compromise going to be? Is it going to be 6 weeks in LA and 6 hours in Brooklyn? Or is it going to be 3.5 weeks in LA and 2.5 weeks in Brooklyn? Because he also deserves to enjoy his family over the summer. When we're going to go someplace on a tiyul, or we're going to take a little vacation, whatever it might be, and you have in mind that it should be, your friends told you, Italy is the place to go for the honeymoon, that's the best place. I see I'm talking to such tzidkanias, nobody has any idea what I'm talking about over here. But he says, Italy, Rome, Aesop. Let's go to Switzerland instead. So, okay, not bad, Switzerland, not bad. And you say, you know what? If it means that much to you, of course, we can have a good time anywhere where we go. The ava that you and your husband will create, be'ez Hashem, is a love that is dependent on you always trying to think how you can enhance your husband's life. And that's how we rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made up in his mind that he had to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. What was the reason? The reason was because if the Klal Yisrael cannot get along with one another, and Klal Yisrael is fighting with each other, and we're upset with each other, and we're hating each other, so then that's not the kind of bias, that's not the kind of house where I, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, want to come and be. But if Klal Yisrael can love each other and respect each other and honor each other and embrace each other, even their differences, and they get along with each other and they give in to one another, the mevatir, says the Rebbe, that's the house that I want to be in, and then I'll come right back. 2,000 years, we can't prove it to Hashem that we're ready for it. So it didn't come back yet. But if we increase our Avas Yisrael, the way it's supposed to be, like the Chazon Ish writes over here, I'm just busy thinking all day long how I can enhance this person's life, then that is what is a tikkun of the chet. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now I can bring the Beis HaMikdash. And this possibly could be the big Segulah for all of you at this time of the year. It's mamish in Yonit Yoyma. The more that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that's the kind of a person that you are, the more HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now I can bring her and her husband under the threshold of their house, because that is going to be a house that is Kayam La'olam Va'ed, forever and ever and ever. And the only one that can prove that to Hashem is you. The 3 weeks, 21 days, you could accomplish a lot in 21 days. You could work on this midah every single day with your siblings, with your parents, with your friends, with all of your chaverim or chaverot, whatever they're called, from seminary, the ones that you haven't spoken to in a while, and you know she's going through a difficult time. She just went out with the guy 13.5 times, and in the middle of the date, where she's about to think she's going to get asked to marry him, he says to her in the most mature and polished way possible, I don't think it's going to work. Have a good life. And she's a wreck. And you call her, and she's crying, she's sobbing so much, you can't even understand what she's saying. And you just sit on the phone for half an hour while she's crying, and then you empathize, and then you give her brachas, and then you try to call her the next day again. And if she lives in LA, you go to visit her, and you go out to Mensch's over there, you get a big latte this tall with some chocolate syrup on top. and you let her know it's going to be okay. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees a person during this time thinking about others, Hashem says, I'm thinking about you. And I will bring you, I promise you, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I will bring you to the one that you're going to think about and enhance his life all of the time. I want to leave you off with one last Maisa. I have a son who's learning in a yeshiva in Lakewood by Rav Velvel Mintz. Rosh Yeshiva is a tzaddik, you said, Olam. A Balmida is like, it's not shaykh. His father-in-law's yortzeit was just about a month ago. And he gave what's called Dibei Zichronos. He gave memories and stories about his father-in-law. Rav Gavriel Finkel was one of the heads of the Bezdin in Lakewood for decades. And he spoke about his midos, he spoke about how this kind of a person that he was always trying to find the good in others and doing for others, never really thinking about himself. And he told over a Maisa that by the Shiva, a younger Rav from the community came in, and he sat down near the family and he said, I must tell you a Maisa about your father. He said, I had a meeting with him, and apparently most of his meetings would take place, he had a study in his house, and they would close the door, and Rav Finkel would sit behind his desk, and the other person on the other side, and they would shmooze whatever people were coming for, hadracha, they were coming for eitzah, they had halachic questions, they needed advice, all different things. And he said, I'm sitting there in your father's office, and the phone rings. Now, Rabbi Finkel had a policy. If the phone would ever ring, he would answer it. Because if you're a Rav and someone's calling, it could be it's very important. So who am I to decide you can only call me between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon or between 10 and 12? No. If the phone rings, and this is olden days where there was something called a phone on a wire. You ever see those before? Yeah? Without caller ID, so you didn't even know, caller ID is, no, not in the mood today, okay? So without caller ID, you answer every call. So the phone rings, and he excuses himself to the person that he's speaking with, and he says, take the call, takes the call. And he says, hello. And suddenly he hears on the other end of the phone, there is a woman's voice, and she is screeching and screaming and yelling. And it's so loud that the Rav that's on the other side of the table, he can hear what the woman is saying. And she's saying not very nice words to the Av Bezdin of Lakewood. She's saying really nasty things, not derech eretz at all. And Rav Finkel has the phone. And the lady keeps screaming and screaming and screaming. And at one point he takes the phone and he puts it down on the table. And she's screaming so loud, you can still hear everything that she's saying. So the Rav looks at Rabbi Finkel and he says, Rabbi, he says, what in the world is going on over here? Why are you letting this lady scream at you like that? He said, this lady is calling because yesterday her husband was here for a din Torah. Din Torah means there was a halachic case between her husband and somebody else, probably in town. And they came to Rabbi Finkel that he should decide the outcome of the case. And he said, I ruled in favor of the other party against her husband. And this woman is so angry, she's calling right now to defend the honor of her husband, and so she's screaming the daylights out of herself right now to get her point across. So he said, so why are you listening? Why are you letting her scream? Just tell her. He said, she's a real Eshes Chayil. Halavai, every wife would love their husband so much that they would stand up and they would support and honor him as much as she is honoring her husband. Halavai! I'm going to let her stop? He says, but you know what? She's saying such not nice things about me. I don't really want to hear it in my ear. So I'm going to put it on the table. I'm going to let her keep screaming. I can still hear it, and let her get it out of her system. And when she's done, I'll say, thank you very much, and I'll hang up the phone. So the Rav says, Rabbi, she's screaming and screaming and screaming. She's not saying nice things to you. She's not even going to know if you do it. Why don't you just hang up the phone right now? And Rav Finkel looks at this man. While he's being berated by this woman, he says, because that is not nice. And you don't do things to somebody else that's not nice. Let her say what she has to say. Let her get it off of her chest. And at the end of the conversation, when she's done, I will say, thank you, and I will hang up. And he said, that's exactly what your father did. She screamed and screamed and screamed, I guess until she ran out of breath. And when he heard silence, he said, thank you, I'm sorry, and he hung up the phone. Because we don't do things that are not nice, we do things that are nice. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees you during this time of the year, going out of your way to be extra nice, and extra careful, and extra understanding, and extra embracing, and a better friend, and a mavateres, giving up what you want for somebody else, Hashem says that's exactly where she needs to be holding, so I can bring her into her own biased Ne'eman b'Yisrael. Im Yetz Hashem, you should be Zeicha be'ez Hashem to work these 21 days, work hard. Hard work is what makes us the great people that we are. Find someone maybe that you don't have the greatest relationship with. Find someone you have a good one, make it even better. And do everything you can to enhance their life, to show your love of that person. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, not only are you ready for me to help you build your own bias, Ne'eman b'Yisrael, it's people like you that allow me to build the ultimate bias. We should be Zeichim Yetz Hashem, that by the end of these 3 weeks, that we don't have to sit on the floor on Tisha B'Av, but rather we should be able to come, Karlai Mayid, like it says in the Pasuk in Eicha. It's going to be a Mayid, it's going to be a festival. It's going to be a holiday, it will be a Yom Tiv. We should be Zeichim to see the greatest Yom Tiv of all, with the Bias Koyal Tzedek V'Mheirav Yameinu.